There are places on old maps that nobody remembers drawing. Roads that appear where forests should be. Towns that vanish from records. And sometimes, something waits there. Something hungry. My name is Daniel Mercer. 3 years ago, I worked as a freelance journalist specializing in forgotten American towns. Places abandoned by industry, disaster, or simple neglect. Most stories were boring. If I had known what lived there, I would have burned every note I took and never spoken its name again. But then, you wouldn't know the truth. It started with a letter. Not an email, not a phone call. A handwritten letter, delivered to my apartment in Chicago. The envelope was yellow with age. Inside was a single page. The handwriting shook violently, as if the writer had been terrified. It read, "The killings have started again. Please come before the moon turns red. Nobody here will tell the truth. Ask about the Hollow Man." There was no signature, only an address. Blackthorn Hollow, West Virginia. I tried searching for the town online. Nothing. No website, no local records, no social media. Almost as if it didn't exist. That should have been enough reason not to go. Instead, it made me curious. 2 days later, I was driving through the Appalachian Mountains. Rain hammered the windshield. Fog swallowed entire hillsides. The GPS lost signal hours earlier. The road became narrower, then narrower still. Finally, I saw a rusted sign. Blackthorn Hollow, population 312. Someone had scratched through the number. Below it, in deep gouges, another message had been carved. Do not be outside after dark. I laughed nervously, thought it was some local prank. The first mistake. The town sat inside a bowl-shaped valley surrounded by endless forest. Every building looked old, not historic, old, rotting, tired, like the town itself wanted to die. People watched me from porches. Nobody waved, nobody smiled. They simply stared, as if they already knew why I had come, as if they had been waiting. I checked into the only motel. The owner was an elderly woman named Ruth. She slid a room key across the counter. "You leaving tomorrow?" she asked. "Depends on the story." Her expression darkened. "There ain't no story here." I smiled. Someone sent me a letter. The color drained from her face. For several seconds, she said nothing. Then she whispered, "You should leave before sunset." I laughed again. My second mistake. Outside, thunder rolled across the mountains. The sun sank lower. The forest surrounding Blackthorn Hollow grew darker than it should have. Almost black. Like light itself was afraid to enter. That night, I sat in my motel room, reviewing notes.
At exactly 11:17 p.m., something howled. Not a dog, not a wolf, not anything I had ever heard. The sound came from the forest. Long, deep, impossible. Every light in town went out simultaneously. The howl echoed again, closer. Then another answered from farther away. Then another, a chorus of nightmares. I looked outside. Every house was dark, every door locked, every curtain drawn. The entire town was hiding. And suddenly, I understood they weren't hiding from a storm. They were hiding from whatever was making that sound. Then came the scream. A man's scream. Cut short, instantly, as if something had torn it away. Silence followed. Complete silence. No crickets, no wind, nothing. At 11:22 p.m., something walked past my motel window. I only saw its shadow. 7 feet tall, broad shoulders, long arms, moving with an unnatural limp. Then it stopped, directly outside my room. I couldn't breathe. The shadow remained motionless, listening, smelling, waiting, slowly. A claw scraped across the glass. Screesh! I froze. The sound traveled from one side of the window to the other. Then silence. A full minute passed. Another. Finally, the footsteps moved away, into the darkness. I didn't sleep, not even for a second, and by morning, someone was dead. The victim was found behind the church, a local mechanic named Walter Green. The sheriff refused to let anyone near the scene. But rumors spread quickly. Everyone said the same thing. He had been torn apart, not stabbed, not shot, torn apart. Animal attack. That's what the sheriff claimed. Yet no animal leaves footprints shaped like human feet. I learned that later, from the coroner, the only person willing to talk. His name was Dr. Elias Ward. He met me behind the cemetery after sunset. He looked exhausted, terrified, as if he hadn't slept in years. "You need to leave," he told me. "Everybody keeps saying that, because everybody here knows." Knows what? He stared into the woods. For a long moment, he didn't answer. Then, "The Hollow Man is back." I expected folklore, ghost stories, local legends. Instead, he showed me photographs, autopsy photos. Walter Green's body. The injuries were horrific. Huge bite marks, deep claw wounds. Something else stood out. Human teeth, mixed among the animal bites. I looked up. "What did this?" Dr. Ward whispered. "It starts as a man." Cold spread through my chest. He continued, "There have been killings here for over a century. Every few years. Always under the red moon. Always the same pattern. Livestock disappear first, then pets, then people. Witnesses report a giant wolf walking upright." I laughed nervously. "A defense mechanism." He didn't. "You think I'm crazy? You're talking about werewolves." "No." He looked genuinely disturbed. "Werewolves are stories. This thing is real." A branch snapped somewhere in the forest. Both of us turned immediately. Nobody was there. Yet I noticed something strange. Dr. Ward's hands were trembling, not from age, from fear, real fear, the kind people feel when they know monsters exist. As we left, he grabbed my arm. His grip was surprisingly strong. "Whatever you hear at night," he said, "do not open your door, even if it sounds human." I wanted to ask more, but he walked away, fast, almost running. That evening, I started interviewing townspeople. Nobody would discuss the Hollow Man. The moment I mentioned the name, conversations ended, doors closed, eyes looked away. Then I met Jacob Turner.
A retired hunter, missing 2 fingers, living alone near the edge of town. When I mentioned the Hollow Man, he invited me inside, the first person who had. His cabin smelled of wood smoke and gun oil. Mounted deer heads covered the walls. But one thing caught my attention, a massive claw mark carved through the front door. Jacob noticed me staring. That wasn't there before 1998. What happened? His face became pale. I shot it. My stomach tightened. What? The thing in the woods. You saw it? He nodded. Closer than I ever wanted. Outside, darkness settled over Blackthorn Hollow. Inside, the old hunter poured whiskey with shaking hands. Then he began telling me the story that changed everything. And what he described was far worse than any werewolf legend. Jacob Turner stared into his whiskey for a long time before speaking again. The cabin had grown quiet. Outside, the wind pushed against the walls. The trees creaked. And somewhere deep in the forest, something howled. The old hunter flinched, not visibly, not enough for most people to notice, but I saw it. The sound scared him. That alone told me everything. A man like Jacob Turner didn't frighten easily. I was 34, he said finally. Best tracker in 3 counties. He poured another drink. His hand trembled. Back then there were 6 of us. 6 hunters? He nodded. Good men. His eyes drifted toward the darkness beyond the window. Only one came back. A chill crawled up my spine. Jacob leaned forward and began his story. It started in October of 1998. Livestock had begun disappearing from farms around Blackthorn Hollow. Not unusual at first. Coyotes, bears, mountain lions. The mountains were full of predators. But then the bodies started appearing. Cows torn open. Horses ripped apart. Dogs found hanging from tree branches 30 feet above the ground. That wasn't normal. Animals didn't do things like that. The sheriff organized a hunting party. 6 men, all experienced trackers, all armed, Jacob among them. They entered the forest just after sunrise. At first they found nothing. No tracks, no blood, no signs of movement. Then around noon, one of the men discovered footprints. Huge footprints. Almost wolf-like, but wrong. The toes were too long, the stride too wide. And every few yards, the tracks changed. The paw prints became human footprints. Bare feet. Large, distorted. As though whatever made them couldn't decide what it was. Jacob remembered kneeling beside one print, measuring it with his hand. It was nearly twice the size of a normal human foot. The sheriff wanted to turn back immediately. Most of the men agreed. One didn't. A younger hunter named Carl Mason, 26 years old, fearless or stupid. Sometimes those are the same thing. Carl insisted they continue. The tracks led deeper into the mountains. Hours passed. The forest became stranger, quieter. Even the birds vanished. Jacob said that was the first thing that truly frightened him. Predators don't scare birds. Not all of them. Not at once. Something had emptied the forest. Everything alive had fled. As sunset approached, they found a clearing. In the center stood an old cabin, abandoned, collapsed, half swallowed by vines. The roof had caved in years earlier, yet fresh footprints surrounded it. Human footprints, wolf tracks, and something in between. The men entered carefully. Inside they found bones. Hundreds of bones. Animal bones, human bones, children's bones. Some were decades old, others looked fresh. Very fresh. One skull still had pieces of flesh attached. Nobody spoke, nobody moved. Then they heard breathing, heavy breathing, from beneath the floor. The sheriff aimed his flashlight downward. There was a hole, a narrow tunnel leading underground. For several seconds, everything was silent. Then, a voice emerged from the darkness. A human voice, weak, broken. "Help me." Jacob stopped speaking. The cabin fell silent. I leaned forward. What happened? His eyes met mine. For the first time that evening, I saw genuine terror. The voice belonged to my brother. A knot formed in my stomach. What? My brother died 2 years before that. The wind rattled the cabin windows. Neither of us spoke. The voice called again. Jake, exactly as his brother used to. Same tone, same accent, same voice. Impossible. The sheriff ordered everyone outside, immediately. Nobody argued. The men backed away from the hole, slowly, carefully. The voice became desperate. "Please don't leave me." Then it started crying, a grown man sobbing in the darkness. One of the hunters almost went back. Almost. Then the crying changed. The sound stretched, deepened, became something else, something animal, something hungry. And suddenly, something exploded from the hole. Jacob slammed his glass onto the table. Even after nearly 30 years, the memory still haunted him. It moved too fast. His voice cracked. Jesus Christ. The thing that emerged wasn't a wolf. It wasn't a man. It was both, and neither. 7 feet tall, covered in black fur. Its arms were too long, its shoulders too broad. Its eyes. Jacob stopped, swallowed hard. Its eyes were human. That was the worst part. Human eyes. Intelligent. Aware. The creature landed on all fours, then stood upright. The sheriff fired first. The rifle round struck its chest. The creature barely reacted. Another shot. Another. Nothing. Then it smiled. A wide, unnatural smile. filled with blood, filled with human teeth. The nightmare charged, and the slaughter began. Carl died first. The creature reached him before anyone could react. 1 second he was standing there, the next he was gone. Not knocked down, not bitten, gone. The force of the impact launched him into a tree. The trunk shattered, so did Carl, the sound his body made. Jacob still heard it in his dreams. The remaining hunters opened fire. 6 rifles, muzzle flashes filled the darkness. The creature disappeared into the trees. Silence followed. Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. Then came a scream. One of the hunters, somewhere behind them. A flashlight beam swung wildly through the forest. For half a second they saw him, 20 feet above the ground, being dragged through the branches. Then darkness swallowed him. The screaming stopped. Blood rained from the leaves. Jacob's voice became quieter, almost a whisper. We never even found his body. Outside, another howl echoed through Blackthorn Hollow, much closer this time. I noticed Jacob looking toward the door, listening, waiting, as if he expected something to be standing there. He continued. The men fled. No strategy, no plan. They ran through the woods as night fell. Branches tore at their clothes. Roots tripped their feet. Behind them, something followed. Never attacking, never rushing, simply keeping pace, playing with them, like a cat with injured mice. One by one, the hunters vanished. A scream, then silence. Another scream, then silence, until only Jacob and the sheriff remained. They reached an old fire tower near midnight. The sheriff climbed first, Jacob right behind him. The creature emerged from the trees. Moonlight illuminated its body. Its fur, its claws, its face. Jacob froze, because he recognized it. Not completely, not enough to know who it was, but enough to realize something horrifying. The creature wasn't fully transformed. Part of its face was human, a man's face, half hidden beneath fur and bone. And that human side was crying. Tears streamed from one eye, while the other burned yellow. The monster looked up at them, then spoke. Not growled, not snarled, spoke. Help me. The same voice from beneath the cabin, the same human desperation. The sheriff hesitated. That hesitation killed him. The creature leapt, 30 feet straight upward. The tower shook violently. Metal screamed. Bolts snapped, and the entire structure collapsed. Jacob remembered falling. The impact shattered his arm, knocked the air from his lungs. When he regained consciousness, morning had arrived. The forest was silent. The creature was gone. The sheriff was gone. Everyone was gone. Only blood remained. Jacob became the sole survivor, the only witness, the only man who knew the truth. And ever since that night, the killings returned every few years, always during the red moon, always worse than before. Jacob finished his story. Neither of us spoke. The room felt colder now, the shadows deeper. Outside, darkness had completely swallowed Blackthorn Hollow. Then I noticed something. A framed photograph sitting on a shelf. An old black and white family portrait. My eyes narrowed. A young Jacob stood beside another man. His brother. The brother who had died years before the hunt. The brother whose voice had called from beneath the cabin. The brother whose face looked strangely familiar. Very familiar. Because I had seen that face before. Earlier that day. Walking through town. Alive. Watching me. From across the street. And suddenly, I realized someone had been following me since I arrived in Blackthorn Hollow. Someone who should have been dead for nearly 30 years. I barely slept that night. Every creak of the motel walls sounded like footsteps. Every gust of wind felt like a warning. And sometime around 3 a.m, I became aware of something that made my blood run cold. There were footprints outside my window. Fresh footprints. Not enemy tracks. Not normal human footprints. Bare feet. Large. Misshapen. Leading from the forest directly to my room. And stopping beneath the window. As if something had stood there. watching me sleep. The next morning, I returned to town. Fog covered Blackthorn Hollow like a burial shroud. People moved through the streets with their heads down. Nobody smiled. Nobody spoke. The entire town seemed nervous, waiting, as if everyone knew something terrible was approaching. And maybe they did. The first place I visited was the town library. It occupied an old brick building near the courthouse. The librarian, an elderly woman named Martha Bell, looked uneasy the moment I walked inside. Especially when I asked about local history, even more when I mentioned the Hollow Man. For several seconds she simply stared. Then she stood, locked the front door, closed every curtain, and whispered, "You're not supposed to ask about that." Why? Because people who ask questions disappear. That wasn't exactly reassuring, but she eventually led me downstairs. Into a basement archive. Dust filled the air, shelves bent under the weight of forgotten records, boxes stacked floor to ceiling. Martha stopped beside a metal cabinet. Inside were newspaper clippings dating back almost 2 centuries. She handed me the oldest file. The headline read, "Mass Disappearance in Blackthorn Valley, October 14th, 1847. I felt a knot tighten in my stomach. The article described a settlement that existed before Blackthorn Hollow, a farming community called Ash Creek. 38 people had vanished over a single month. Men, women, children, entire families. The survivors claimed something hunted the forest at night, a giant wolf. But the descriptions didn't match any animal. Witnesses reported seeing it stand upright, open doors, use tools, even speak. The local priest called it a demon. The newspapers called it mass hysteria. The killings continued. A leather-bound diary recovered from the home of a settler named Samuel Crow. Most pages were damaged, others stained with what looked disturbingly like blood. One entry survived almost intact. I read it aloud. October 28, 1847. The beast came again. We heard it scratching at the walls. It spoke with Abigail's voice. My wife nearly opened the door. The thing begged us to help it. It sounded hurt. It sounded human. Then we heard Abigail screaming from outside, but Abigail was standing beside us. The creature knew her voice. God help us. The creature knows all our voices. I stopped reading. The basement felt colder. Martha looked pale. That's impossible. No, she whispered. It isn't. I turned another page. The final entry was dated 3 days later. Halloween night. The moon is red tonight. Father believes the curse has returned. We found the old stones beneath the hill. Something was buried there long ago. Something evil. Something hungry. We should never have dug it up. If anyone finds this journal, do not trust the voices. Do not follow the crying. And if you see a man with yellow eyes, run. The remaining pages were missing, torn out. I closed the journal slowly. Neither of us spoke. Then I noticed something tucked inside the back cover. A photograph. Not old, modern, maybe 10 years old. It showed 6 men standing beside a cave entrance. One of them was Jacob Turner. Another was Sheriff Collins. A third was Dr. Ward, the coroner. I frowned. What is this? Martha looked surprised. You've never seen it? No. Her face darkened. That's the expedition. What expedition? The librarian hesitated, then answered. The one that found the burial chamber. My pulse quickened. What burial chamber? The place where the curse began. The story emerged piece by piece. 10 years earlier, heavy flooding had exposed a cave system beneath Blackthorn Hollow. Several local men explored it. Among them were Jacob, the sheriff, and Dr. Ward. Deep inside the caves, they discovered an ancient stone chamber, far older than the town, older than the settlement before it, possibly older than European arrival altogether. The walls were covered in strange carvings. Animals, moons, human figures transforming into beasts. At the center stood a massive stone coffin, bound with iron chains. The chains had rusted away centuries ago. The coffin lid had already been broken. Something inside had escaped long before anyone arrived. The men reported their discovery. State archaeologists came to investigate. Then, strange things started happening. Workers disappeared. Equipment vanished. 2 researchers quit without explanation. One was later found wandering naked through the forest, completely insane, repeating the same phrase over and over. "The red moon is coming. The red moon is coming. The red moon is coming." The site was abandoned shortly afterward, officially due to safety concerns. Unofficially, because everyone involved was terrified. "Where is the cave?" Martha immediately shook her head. "No. I need to see it." "No. Why?" The old woman looked genuinely frightened. Then she said something that made my stomach drop. "Because that's where it sleeps." The sky darkened unusually early that afternoon. Storm clouds rolled over the mountains. A strange copper-colored light filled the valley. The townspeople noticed it too. People hurried indoors. Businesses closed. Curtains were drawn. By 4 o'clock, the streets were almost empty. Something was happening. Something everyone understood except me. I found Dr. Ward outside the church. He looked exhausted, worse than before, as though he hadn't slept in days. When I mentioned the cave, his face went white. "Who told you?" "Martha," he cursed under his breath, then looked toward the mountains. For a moment I thought he might walk away. Instead he said, "The moon rises tomorrow." So, he stared directly into my eyes. And for the first time, I saw real panic. Not concern, not anxiety, panic. "The red moon rises tomorrow." The way he said it made my skin crawl. "What does that mean?" He answered immediately. "It means we're out of time." That evening, the town bell rang. Once, twice, 3 times. The sound echoed across the valley. People emerged from their homes. Not many, only a few dozen. Silent, fearful. They gathered outside the church. I followed. Nobody stopped me. Nobody spoke. The priest stood on the church steps, an old man with hollow eyes. He looked less like a priest than a man waiting for execution. In his hands was an ancient book.
Its pages yellow with age, its cover cracked and worn. He opened it and began reading. Not in English, not in Latin, a language I had never heard before. The crowd listened in absolute silence. Then, as one, they repeated the words. The sound sent chills down my spine, a prayer, or maybe a warning. When the ritual ended, everyone turned toward the forest, every single person, at the same time, as though they had heard something. I listened. At first, there was only wind. Then, a howl. Far away, deep in the mountains. A second howl answered. Then a third, then dozens more. The entire forest came alive with them. The crowd lowered their heads. Some people cried, others crossed themselves. A little girl began shaking uncontrollably. Her mother carried her away. The howls continued, growing louder, closer, and hidden among them. I heard something else, a voice, a human voice, barely audible, calling from somewhere inside the woods, calling my name. Daniel. My blood froze. Nobody else seemed to notice. Only me. Again it came. Daniel, soft, weak, almost pleading. I looked toward the tree line. The darkness between the trunks seemed deeper than before, and for a split second, I thought I saw a figure standing there, watching. A man, tall, motionless, yellow eyes glowing in the shadows. Then lightning flashed, and he was gone. Later that night, I returned to my motel. The town had become completely silent. No lights, no movement, no sound except distant thunder. I locked my door, closed the curtains, loaded my recorder, checked my notes, and tried to convince myself this was all superstition, local folklore, mass fear, nothing more. Then I heard scratching beneath the floorboards, slow, deliberate, moving underneath my room. I froze. The scratching stopped. For several seconds, everything was silent. Then a voice whispered from directly beneath my bed. A voice I recognized. Jacob Turner's voice. "Don't move." My heart nearly stopped. The whisper came again, more urgent. "Whatever happens, don't answer the door." A knock sounded immediately. 3 slow taps. From the other side of the room. I stared at the door. Another knock. Then another. Then a familiar voice. Dr. Ward. Daniel. My blood turned to ice. Because I had spoken with Dr. Ward less than an hour ago. And he had left town to check on a patient. There was no way he could be here. No way at all. The voice came again, perfectly imitating him. "Daniel, open the door." And then something smiled on the other side.
I sat frozen on the edge of the bed. The knock came again. 3 slow taps. Patient, almost polite. The voice on the other side sounded exactly like Dr. Ward. Not similar, not close. Exact. Every syllable, every breath, every subtle crack in his voice. "Daniel, please open the door. I need your help." A cold sweat rolled down my neck, because beneath the floorboards, Jacob's whisper returned, barely audible. "Don't answer it." The voice outside immediately stopped. Silence. Then another voice spoke. This one belonged to Ruth, the motel owner. "Daniel, honey, open up. We need to talk." My stomach tightened. The thing outside was changing voices, trying different people, testing, listening, learning. The realization hit me like ice water. It wasn't guessing. It already knew everyone in town. Every voice, every mannerism, every weakness. And somehow, it knew exactly who I trusted. The doorknob slowly turned. Once, twice. The lock rattled. The door shook gently. Then the voice returned, no longer friendly, no longer pretending, just above a whisper. "Daniel." The way it spoke my name made every hair on my body stand up, because for the first time, it sounded hungry. The scratching beneath the floor resumed, closer now, moving directly under my bed. A floorboard shifted. Wood cracked. I nearly screamed. A hand emerged, human, covered in dirt, missing 2 fingers. Jacob's hand. The old hunter pulled himself halfway through a gap between the boards. His face appeared next, pale, sweating, terrified. He raised a finger to his lips. Silence. We listened. The thing outside remained motionless, waiting.
Jacob crawled fully into the room. He held a rifle, old, weathered, loaded.
Without speaking, he pointed toward the window. I understood immediately. We were leaving, now. Not through the door, not through the hallway, through the window. Jacob slowly unlocked it. The slightest noise sounded deafening. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, something slammed against the door from the outside. The entire frame shook. Wood splintered. Another impact followed, much stronger. Jacob whispered, "Run." We climbed through the window and dropped into the darkness behind the motel. The moment our feet touched the ground, the door exploded inward. A roar echoed through the room. Not human, not animal, something between. Something impossible. We ran. Rain began falling almost immediately. Heavy mountain rain, cold and relentless. Within minutes we were soaked. Jacob moved surprisingly fast for a man his age. He led me through narrow back roads and abandoned trails. Neither of us spoke. The forest loomed around us, black shapes twisting in the storm. Lightning flashed overhead. For brief moments the trees appeared frozen in white light, then darkness swallowed them again. We reached an old hunting path. Jacob finally stopped, listening. The rain hammered the leaves around us. Nothing else. No footsteps, no growls, no pursuit, at least none we could hear. "How did you get under my room?" I asked. Jacob ignored the question. Instead, he stared toward the forest. His face looked haunted. "You saw what it can do now." "What was that?" I asked. He answered immediately. "The Hollow Man." The words sounded heavier than before, like saying them gave the creature power. I wiped rain from my eyes. "How can it copy voices?" I asked. Jacob shook his head. "Nobody knows." "Is it one creature?" Silence. That silence terrified me more than any answer could have. Finally, he said, "We used to think so. Used to." The phrase lingered. What changed? Jacob looked away. "I'll show you." We continued deeper into the woods. The storm intensified. Thunder rolled across the mountains. Branches swayed overhead. Several times I thought I heard footsteps behind us. Each time we stopped, listened, found nothing. But the feeling never disappeared. The feeling of being watched, hunted, studied. After nearly an hour, we reached a clearing. In the center stood an old stone monument, half covered in moss, weathered by centuries of rain. The shape resembled a gravestone, but much larger. Ancient symbols covered its surface. Some looked like wolves, others resembled human figures. One carving showed a man splitting open from the inside, while a beast emerged from his body. I felt sick. Jacob brushed moss away from an inscription. "Read it." The words were old, almost impossible to decipher. Yet one sentence remained clear. "The curse shall pass through blood." My pulse quickened. What does that mean? Jacob didn't answer immediately. Instead, he walked toward the edge of the clearing. There, partially hidden beneath weeds and mud, lay dozens of rusted metal crosses. Some were broken, others bent. All carried names. I knelt beside one. My stomach dropped. The date read 1998, the year of Jacob's hunting expedition. Another cross, another. Dozens. Every hunter, every victim, every missing person. Buried here, secretly, away from town, away from questions, away from the truth. Lightning flashed overhead, and suddenly, I noticed something horrifying. One grave had no name, only a warning carved into the metal. "Do not dig." The rain intensified. Jacob stared at the grave. His face had become pale, almost gray. Nobody buried a body there. Then what's inside? The old hunter swallowed. His voice dropped to a whisper. Nothing. That answer frightened me, because Jacob genuinely believed it. Then we heard crying, a child crying, somewhere in the forest, soft, broken, terrified. I turned immediately. Jacob grabbed my arm, hard. "No." "What?" "No matter what you hear." His grip tightened. "Do not follow it." The crying came again, closer. The sound of a little girl lost in the woods, alone, helpless. The kind of sound nobody could ignore, especially not a parent, especially not a decent person. That was precisely why it worked. A branch snapped, the crying stopped. Then came a voice, small, weak, almost drowned by the rain. "Help me." Jacob closed his eyes, as though hearing an old nightmare return. The voice continued, "I'm scared." A flash of lightning illuminated the trees, and for one brief second, I saw her, a little girl, standing between the trunks, barefoot, wearing a white dress. Her long dark hair hung over her face. Rain poured down around her. She looked real, completely real. The girl slowly raised her head. Her eyes glowed yellow. Jacob fired instantly. The rifle blast shattered the silence. The figure vanished, gone before the echo faded. Only darkness remained. Only rain, only trees. My heart pounded so hard it hurt. What the hell was that? Jacob lowered the rifle. His expression was grim. It wasn't a little girl. What was it? The hunter looked toward the forest, toward something only he could see, and quietly replied, "It wants us to find the cave." The journey continued. By midnight, we reached the mountain ridge overlooking Blackthorn Hollow. From there, the town appeared tiny, fragile, a cluster of lights trapped inside endless darkness. Storm clouds churned above it, and beyond the valley, the moon emerged. Not fully, just a sliver. But even through the clouds, its color was wrong. Deep crimson, blood red. The sight made Jacob curse under his breath. No, the fear in his voice alarmed me. What? He stared upward, as if witnessing an execution date written across the sky. It started early. The wind howled through the trees. Thunder cracked overhead, and somewhere deep below us, a wolf answered, then another. Then dozens more. The sounds rose from every direction, encircling the valley, encircling us. Jacob's face drained of color, because he understood something before I did. The howls weren't coming from the forest, they were coming from inside Blackthorn Hollow, the town itself. And for the first time, I realized the monster might already be among the people. Maybe it always had been. Then lightning illuminated the ridge behind us. For a split second, the world became white, and I saw them. Figures standing among the trees, watching, tall, motionless. At least 20 of them, maybe more. Human silhouettes, yellow eyes, not moving, not speaking, just staring. The darkness returned. I blinked. They were gone, or so I thought. Until one of them whispered from somewhere very close, "Daniel." I spun around. Nothing. Only rain, only forest, only shadows. Then the whisper came again, this time directly behind my ear. "He's lying to you." Jacob heard it too, because the old hunter suddenly raised his rifle and aimed it at me. For one terrible second, I couldn't move. Jacob's rifle was aimed directly past my shoulder. His finger rested on the trigger. His eyes were wide with terror. Not anger, not madness, terror. The kind of terror a man feels when he finally sees the thing from his nightmares. Slowly, very slowly, I turned around. There was nothing there. Only rain, only darkness, only swaying trees. The forest stretched endlessly behind me, empty, silent. Yet Jacob didn't lower the rifle. His breathing had become shallow, fast. The barrel tracked something I couldn't see, following it through the woods. Then he fired. The rifle blast shattered the night. A figure darted between the trees. Fast, too fast. I caught only a glimpse, a human shape, tall, thin, running on 2 legs. Then it vanished into the darkness. Jacob fired again, and again. Silence returned. The hunter lowered the weapon. His face looked 20 years older. What was that? He stared into the woods. I don't know anymore. That answer frightened me more than anything else. Because Jacob was the one person who always seemed certain, and now he sounded lost. We left immediately. Neither of us wanted to remain on the ridge. The forest felt wrong, as if hundreds of unseen eyes followed every step. The rain finally began to ease. Fog rolled in from the valley, dense and cold. Soon visibility dropped to only a few yards. The world became gray. The perfect place for something to hide. And something was hiding. I could feel it. The sensation never left. The certainty that we were not alone, that every tree concealed a watcher, every shadow concealed teeth. After nearly 30 minutes, we reached an abandoned logging road. Jacob stopped suddenly, raised a hand, listened. I heard it too. Footsteps, behind us. Crunch, crunch, crunch. Slow, measured, deliberate. The sound stopped whenever we stopped, continued whenever we moved. Always maintaining the same distance. Never closer, never farther. Following, watching, waiting. Jacob looked pale. Keep walking. We obeyed. The footsteps followed. For another mile. Then another. Then another. Never approaching, never leaving. Until finally, they stopped. Completely. The silence that followed felt worse, because now we didn't know where it was. At dawn, we reached a farmhouse, abandoned decades ago. The roof sagged, windows were boarded shut, vines covered most of the walls. Jacob pushed open the front door. Dust exploded into the air. The interior smelled of rot and mildew. Yet surprisingly, someone had been there recently. Footprints covered the floor. Fresh footprints. Human. Dozens of them. I noticed something else. Every mirror inside the house had been broken, not cracked, destroyed, smashed into tiny fragments. The old hunter saw it too. His expression darkened. That's not good. What does it mean? Jacob didn't answer. I followed. The second floor contained 3 bedrooms, all empty, except one. The final room held a single wooden chair. Nothing else. Just a chair, placed directly in front of a window, facing the forest, as though someone had spent hours sitting there, watching, waiting. I approached cautiously. The wood looked worn. The floor beneath it carried deep scratches, like something had repeatedly gripped the boards, something with claws. Then I noticed writing carved into the wall, hundreds of lines, overlapping, chaotic, as though someone had spent years scratching them there. One sentence repeated again and again. It wears their faces, it wears their faces, it wears their faces. My stomach tightened. Another message appeared below, written more recently.
Written in dried blood. Don't trust anyone after dark. A cold breeze swept through the room, though every window was closed. And suddenly, I became aware of a smell. Wet fur, rotting meat, animal musk. Fresh, very fresh. Jacob smelled it too. His face instantly changed. He spun toward the hallway. The rifle came up, ready. Silence. Then, a floorboard creaked downstairs. Both of us froze. Another creak. Slow, heavy. Something had entered the house. Jacob motioned for me to stay behind him. We moved toward the stairs. Carefully. Quietly. The smell intensified. Wet fur, blood, decay. Every instinct screamed at me to run. The old staircase groaned beneath our weight. One step, then another. Halfway down, a voice echoed from below. Soft, human. A woman's voice. Jacob? The hunter froze. Every color drained from his face. Jacob. The voice sounded familiar to him. Painfully familiar. I could see it. Whatever spoke downstairs had struck a nerve. The voice trembled, weak, afraid. Please help me. Jacob whispered one word. No. I looked at him. His hands were shaking. What? The old hunter swallowed hard, then whispered, My wife. My blood turned to ice. Your wife? Jacob nodded, slowly. His eyes never left the darkness below. She died 22 years ago. The voice came again, closer now. Jacob. A sob escaped the darkness. A woman's sob, heartbroken, desperate. The kind of sound that could destroy a man. For a moment, I thought Jacob might go to her, might believe, might hope. Then his expression hardened, and I saw something inside him break. He raised the rifle and shouted, You are not her. The house immediately fell silent, completely silent. No crying, no footsteps, nothing. For several seconds, nothing happened. Then something laughed, not loudly, not wildly, a quiet laugh, amused, mocking. The laughter came from every room simultaneously, above us, below us, inside the walls, inside the ceiling, everywhere. The sound made my skin crawl. Because it wasn't animal. It wasn't monstrous. It sounded human, perfectly human, and somehow that made it worse.
The front door slammed shut downstairs. A violent impact. The entire house shook. Then another, and another, as though something enormous had struck the outside wall. Jacob cursed. We have to leave. No argument. We ran. The laughter continued, following us through the house. A different voice every few seconds. Male, female, young, old, some crying, some begging, some whispering, some screaming. All human, all wrong. We burst through the back door and immediately stopped because someone stood in the yard. A man, tall, thin, motionless, watching us. Rain dripped from his clothes. His face remained hidden beneath the shadow of a wide-brimmed hat. For several seconds, nobody moved. The figure slowly raised his head. I felt my stomach drop because I recognized him instantly. The photograph. The old black and white photograph from Jacob's shelf. The dead brother. Jacob recognized him too. His face went white. Impossible white. The man smiled, slowly, sadly, then spoke. "Hello, Jake." The voice was exactly right. Not imitation, not mimicry. Exactly right. Jacob staggered backward. "No." The man took a step forward. "I've missed you." The hunter raised the rifle. His hands trembled violently. The man didn't seem concerned. If anything, he looked disappointed. "You left me down there." Another step. "You ran." Another step. And now it's awake. Jacob fired. The bullet struck the man's chest. The figure didn't react, didn't bleed, didn't even blink. Instead, his smile widened, too wide, much too wide. His jaw opened farther than humanly possible. Bone cracked, skin split, teeth emerged, rows and rows of teeth, hundreds of them. And behind that impossible mouth, something moved, something alive, something trying to crawl out. Jacob grabbed my arm, hard. "Run." We ran. Behind us, the thing wearing his brother's face began to scream. Not in pain, not in anger, in excitement. The scream echoed through the forest. And from every direction, other screams answered. Dozens, hundreds, hidden across the mountains. The entire forest waking up, the entire forest hungry. And as we fled into the fog, I finally understood the truth. The Hollow Man wasn't hunting the town. It was preparing something. Something far worse. And whatever was coming would arrive with the red moon tomorrow night. The front door slammed shut downstairs. A violent impact. The entire house shook. Then another. And another. As though something enormous had struck the outside wall. Jacob cursed. "We have to leave." No argument. We ran. The laughter continued, following us through the house. A different voice every few seconds. Male, female, young, old. Some crying, some begging, some whispering, some screaming. All human, all wrong. We burst through the back door and immediately stopped. Because someone stood in the yard. A man, tall, thin, motionless, watching us. Rain dripped from his clothes. His face remained hidden beneath the shadow of a wide-brimmed hat. For several seconds, nobody moved. The figure slowly raised his head. I felt my stomach drop because I recognized him instantly. The photograph, the old black and white photograph from Jacob's shelf, the dead brother. Jacob recognized him too. His face went white, impossible white. The man smiled, slowly, sadly, then spoke. "Hello, Jake." The voice was exactly right. Not imitation, not mimicry. Exactly right. Jacob staggered backward. "No." The man took a step forward. "I've missed you." The hunter raised the rifle. His hands trembled violently. The man didn't seem concerned. If anything, he looked disappointed. "You left me down there." You ran. Another step. And now it's awake. Jacob fired. The bullet struck the man's chest. The figure didn't react, didn't bleed, didn't even blink. Instead, his smile widened, too wide, much too wide. His jaw opened farther than humanly possible. Bone cracked, skin split, teeth emerged, rows and rows of teeth, hundreds of them. And behind that impossible mouth, something moved, something alive, something trying to crawl out. Jacob grabbed my arm, hard. "Run." We ran. Behind us, the thing wearing his brother's face began to scream. Not in pain, not in anger, in excitement. A predator's excitement. The scream echoed through the forest, and from every direction, other screams answered. Dozens, hundreds, hidden across the mountains. The entire forest waking up, the entire forest hungry, and as we fled into the fog, I finally understood the truth. The Hollow Man wasn't hunting the town. It was preparing something far worse. And whatever was coming would arrive with the red moon tomorrow night. By noon, Jacob and I stood at the edge of Blackthorn Hollow. The town looked different now. Not abandoned, not frightened, prepared. People moved quickly through the streets carrying supplies. Wooden boards covered windows. Heavy chains secured doors. Families hurried indoors without speaking. Nobody looked at us. Nobody wanted to, because everyone already knew what was coming. The red moon would rise tomorrow night, and Blackthorn Hollow had survived enough cycles to recognize the signs. The question was simple. How? How had this town lasted nearly 2 centuries against something that should have wiped it from existence? The answer lay beneath the church. At least that's what Jacob believed. And after everything I'd seen, I wasn't about to argue. The church sat atop a small hill overlooking town, a white wooden structure built sometime in the late 1800s. Simple, modest, ancient. The priest was waiting for us, as if he knew we were coming. Father Grayson looked exhausted. Dark circles hung beneath his eyes. His hands trembled slightly. Yet there was something else. Resignation. The look of a man who had carried a terrible burden for too long. He didn't ask questions, didn't demand explanations, simply opened the church doors and said, "You're too late." Those 4 words settled heavily in the air. Jacob stepped forward. "Tell us anyway." The priest studied him for a moment, then nodded. Slowly, sadly, "Follow me." Rows of wooden pews stretched toward the altar. Candles flickered softly. The air smelled of incense and old wood. At first glance, nothing seemed unusual. Then, Father Grayson moved the altar and revealed a trapdoor beneath it. My stomach tightened. The priest lifted the iron ring. The hatch groaned open. Cold air rushed upward, ancient air. The smell that emerged was impossible to describe. Earth, mold, rot, something older, something buried. His face became pale. He had been here before. I could tell. The priest handed each of us a lantern, then began descending. We followed. The tunnel stretched deep beneath the church, far deeper than should have been possible. Stone walls surrounded us, hand-carved, ancient. Water dripped from the ceiling, echoing endlessly. Every sound seemed amplified underground. Every breath, every footstep, every heartbeat. The deeper we went, the colder it became. The tunnel finally opened into a massive chamber, and what I saw there nearly stopped my heart. The walls were covered with names, thousands of names, carved directly into the stone. Generation after generation, dates stretching back over a century. Every victim, every disappearance, every death. The sheer scale of it was overwhelming. Blackthorn Hollow hadn't suffered occasional attacks. It had endured a massacre that never ended. One name after another, one year after another. An endless record of horror. And near the center of the chamber stood something even worse. A cage, massive, constructed from iron bars thicker than my arm. Old chains hung from its sides. The metal was rusted black. Something had been imprisoned there for a very long time. I approached carefully. The bars bore deep scratches, hundreds of them. No, thousands, claw marks. The realization hit me immediately. Whatever had been inside had desperately wanted out.
Father Grayson stopped beside the cage. His expression had become grim. "Do you know what this is?" I shook my head. The priest looked toward Jacob. The hunter remained silent. Finally, Father Grayson answered. "This is where they kept the first one." A cold knot formed in my stomach. The first what? The priest hesitated, as though speaking the truth carried consequences. Then he said it. The first Hollow Man. Silence filled the chamber. Even the dripping water seemed to stop. I stared at the cage. trying to process what I just heard. You mean the curse started here? Father Grayson nodded. Long before settlers arrived, his lantern illuminated carvings on the walls, strange symbols, human figures, wolves, moons, transformation, transforming again, the same imagery I'd seen on the monument in the forest, only older, much older. The native tribes avoided this valley, he continued. They believed something lived beneath the mountains. A spirit? The priest's eyes met mine. No, his answer came immediately. A prisoner. The story he told sounded impossible. Yet after everything I'd witnessed, impossible no longer mattered. According to local legend, centuries ago, a man arrived in the valley. Nobody knew where he came from. Nobody knew his real name. Only that he was wounded, starving, near death. The tribes took him in, fed him, sheltered him, and regretted it forever, because the man wasn't sick. He was infected, not with disease, with something else. Something ancient. Something alive. The killings began shortly afterward. Families disappeared. Hunters vanished. Entire camps were found torn apart. The survivors described a giant beast walking beneath the moon, a creature that wore human skin. The tribe eventually captured it. Not easily, not without sacrifice. Dozens died, but eventually they imprisoned the creature inside the stone chamber, inside the cage before us, and there it remained for generations, until the settlers arrived. Someone opened the cage, until the cycle began again. I stared at the ancient prison. One question immediately surfaced. If it escaped centuries ago, Father Grayson interrupted. It didn't. A chill crawled up my spine. The priest slowly raised his lantern and pointed toward the far side of the chamber. At first I saw nothing, only darkness. Then my eyes adjusted, and I realized there was another cage, larger, far larger, hidden deeper within the cavern. Its iron bars looked newer, stronger, reinforced. The sight made my stomach twist, because unlike the first cage, this one wasn't empty. Something sat inside, watching us. The lantern light barely reached it. At first I thought it was a man, an old man, thin, motionless, wrapped in tattered blankets. Then it moved, slowly, very slowly, and I noticed its eyes, yellow, glowing softly in the darkness. My heart skipped a beat. Jacob raised his rifle immediately. The prisoner smiled, a sad smile, not threatening, but predatory. Almost relieved, as though he had been waiting for visitors, waiting for years, waiting for this exact moment. The creature stood, and every instinct in my body screamed, "Run!" The thing was enormous.
Even hunched over, it stood nearly 7 feet tall. Its limbs loomed wrong, too long, too thin. Its fingers ended in black claws. Yet its face remained disturbingly human, wrinkled, ancient, tired. The eyes alone betrayed what it truly was. The prisoner stepped toward the bars. Chains rattled softly, and then he spoke. His voice sounded cracked, dry, like leaves scraping across stone. "You shouldn't be here." I felt rooted to the ground, unable to move, unable to look away. Father Grayson sighed heavily, as though introducing an old enemy, then quietly said, "Daniel." The priest's voice trembled. "Meet the man who started all of this." The prisoner closed his eyes, pain crossed his face. Then he whispered, "My name was Elias." A shock ran through me, because I'd heard that name before. Dr. Elias Ward, the coroner, the man helping us, the man still walking around town. The prisoner slowly opened his eyes and said the words that changed everything. "That man is not me. Silence. Absolute silence. Even Jacob looked stunned. The prisoner gripped the bars, hard enough to bend iron, and whispered. It took my face. My pulse hammered in my ears. No, that wasn't possible. Dr. Ward had spoken with us, helped us, warned us. The prisoner seemed to read my thoughts. His expression became sorrowful. He warned you because he needed you alive. The cavern suddenly felt much colder, much darker, much smaller. The creature's yellow eyes locked onto mine, and he delivered the sentence I would remember for the rest of my life. The Hollow Man doesn't kill because it's hungry. A pause. Then, it kills because it's building a family. Behind us, somewhere deep within the tunnels, a distant howl echoed through the darkness, and for the first time since arriving in Blackthorn Hollow, the prisoner looked afraid, truly afraid. His yellow eyes widened. He turned toward the sound, then whispered, "No." Another howl followed, closer, much closer. The prisoner's face lost all color, and he stared directly at Father Grayson. "Lock the church." "What?" "Lock the church." The creature slammed against the bars. The entire cage shook. Chains rattled violently, and then he screamed. "It's already inside." The howl echoed again, this time from directly above us. Inside the church, the sound vibrated through the stone ceiling. Dust drifted downward. Tiny pebbles rattled across the cavern floor. Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. Then came another sound. Footsteps, slow, heavy, crossing the church floor overhead. One step, then another, then another. The prisoner in the cage backed away from the bars. For the first time since meeting him, he looked terrified. Not concerned, not uneasy, terrified. And that terrified me, because if that thing was afraid, what was walking above us? Father Grayson grabbed his lantern. "We need to go." The prisoner immediately shook his head. "No." The priest froze. "What?" The yellow-eyed man pointed toward the tunnel. His clawed hand trembled. "You go up there, and it will see you." Jacob raised his rifle. "Then what do we do?" The prisoner didn't answer right away. Instead, he listened. The footsteps continued, slow, patient, almost thoughtful, as though something above us was searching, something intelligent. Finally, the prisoner spoke. "It knows you're here." Silence followed. The statement felt absolute, certain, the kind of certainty that leaves no room for hope. I looked toward the tunnel leading back to the church. The darkness at its entrance seemed deeper now, watching us. The prisoner stepped closer to the bars and lowered his voice. "How much do you know?" "Not enough," Jacob answered. The prisoner nodded. I figured. His eyes drifted toward me. "Then listen carefully. My real name is Elias Crow." The name meant nothing to me, but Father Grayson visibly reacted, as though he'd just heard the name of a ghost. The prisoner noticed. Yes, his expression became bitter. That Crow family. The same surname from Samuel Crow's journal. The diary we found in the library. The realization hit me immediately. The prisoner saw it happen and nodded. My family carried the curse. A distant thud echoed above us. The church doors. Something was hitting them. Hard. Nobody spoke. The prisoner continued. People think the Hollow Man is a creature. Another impact, louder this time. The prisoner smiled sadly. They're wrong. What is it? I asked. His eyes met mine. It's an infection. A chill crawled through me. No. Yes. The old creature nodded. Not a virus. Not a disease. Something older. Another crash. The church shook. Dust rained from the ceiling. The prisoner ignored it, as though time was running out. The thing inside the Hollow Man isn't flesh. It isn't blood. It isn't even alive. My mouth felt dry. What is it then? The prisoner stared into the darkness, toward memories centuries old, then whispered, It's hunger. At first I thought I'd misheard him. Hunger? The prisoner nodded, the oldest kind. He gripped the bars, his claws scraped iron. It moves from person to person, generation to generation. It learns, it adapts, it grows. A terrible thought surfaced. What happens to the people it infects? The prisoner's expression darkened. They disappear. The answer came immediately, at first. Then he looked at Jacob, and I saw genuine sorrow in his eyes. It learns their voice. It learns their memories. It learns who they love. It learns who loves them. The implications hit like a hammer. The creature wasn't imitating people. It was stealing them, absorbing them, keeping pieces, using them later. The thing that had spoken with Jacob's wife's voice had known her.
The thing wearing his brother's face had been his brother, at least partially. My stomach turned. The prisoner saw it and nodded. Now you're beginning to understand. Another impact shook the church, much stronger. A crack appeared in the ceiling above us. Father Grayson looked upward, pale. There through the doors, the prisoner cursed. A low growl escaped his throat. Not animal, not human, something in between. How many? Jacob asked. The prisoner didn't hesitate. Too many. Silence. Then I asked the question neither of them wanted to hear. What do you mean? The prisoner slowly looked at me, his eyes filled with something close to pity. You still think there's only one? The cavern suddenly felt freezing cold. No, I already suspected, but hearing it confirmed was different. The prisoner nodded. As long as the hollow man feeds, it reproduces. I stared at him, unable to speak. He continued, every victim becomes part of it. Not immediately, not completely, but eventually. The pieces began fitting together. The figures in the forest, the yellow eyes, the voices, the impossible sightings, the howls coming from inside town. My blood ran cold. There are more. The prisoner smiled bitterly. Hundreds. The church above us exploded with noise, wood shattering, people screaming. The sound echoed through the tunnels. Father Grayson staggered backward. No, a woman screamed. Then another. Then silence. The priest closed his eyes, as if he already knew those voices, as if he knew exactly who had just died. The prisoner turned toward the tunnel, listening. His expression became grim. They're moving toward the trap door. Jacob chambered another round. We need a way out. There isn't one. What? The prisoner looked genuinely angry. Do you think this place was built for escape? Nobody answered. Because nobody had. The cavern had only one entrance. The tunnel back to the church. And something was already coming down it. Then the prisoner did something unexpected. He laughed. A tired laugh. A hopeless laugh. The sound echoed strangely inside the cage. Jacob frowned. What? The prisoner looked at him, and for a moment I saw the man he once was. Not the monster, not the prisoner, just a tired old man. You know what's funny? Nobody answered. His smile widened. The thing up there, he pointed toward the church, isn't the one you should fear. A cold knot formed in my stomach. What do you mean? The prisoner's eyes drifted toward the darkness behind us, toward the deepest part of the cavern, toward places our lantern light couldn't reach.
And suddenly, I noticed something. Movement. Far beyond the cage, deep in the shadows. A shape. Large, unnatural, watching. The prisoner saw me notice. His expression became grave. Don't look back there. That instruction immediately made me want to, against every instinct, against every ounce of common sense. I slowly turned. The darkness seemed endless, ancient. Then lightning flashed somewhere above. For a split second, the cavern illuminated. And I saw it. Something massive crouched in the depths. Not 7 feet tall, not 10, much larger. Its silhouette filled the darkness. A mountain of fur and bone. Too large to be human, too human to be animal. Yellow eyes opened. 2, then 4, then dozens. My breath caught. The shape wasn't one creature. It was many, standing together, motionless, watching us, watching me. Then darkness returned. The eyes vanished, and I heard breathing. Heavy breathing. From the depths, the prisoner whispered, "The first hunger." Nobody moved. The sound of breathing continued. Slow, immense, like something sleeping, dreaming, waiting. The prisoner lowered his head, almost in prayer. It should still be asleep. A distant scream echoed from above, followed by gunfire, then more screams. The town was under attack, yet none of us moved, because suddenly, the town felt very far away. The true horror was here, beneath us. The thing in the darkness shifted. Stone groaned, the entire cavern trembled. Dust cascaded from the ceiling. Father Grayson looked horrified. No. The prisoner grabbed the bars, hard enough to bend them. His voice became urgent. "You need to leave." Jacob stared at him. "You just said there was no exit." "There isn't." The prisoner nodded, then pointed toward the darkness. "Unless you're willing to go through there." Nobody liked that answer. Nobody wanted that answer. But before anyone could speak, a voice echoed from the tunnel. Soft, calm, familiar. "Daniel." My blood froze instantly. Not because I recognized the voice, because I recognized it perfectly. Dr. Ward, the coroner, the man who warned me, the man who helped me, the man who wasn't Dr. Ward. The voice echoed again, closer now. "I'm coming down." The prisoner closed his eyes and whispered, "Too late." A shape appeared at the tunnel entrance, tall, human, holding a lantern, smiling. Dr. Ward stepped into the cavern, except now he wasn't pretending anymore. His eyes glowed gold, his smile stretched too wide, and behind him, dozens of figures emerged from the darkness of the tunnel, silent, motionless, waiting. A family, a pack, a congregation of stolen faces. The Hollow Man had arrived, and it wasn't alone. The red moon rose above Blackthorn Hollow, and the slaughter began. For a moment, nobody moved, nobody spoke. The cavern seemed frozen in time. Dr. Ward stood at the mouth of the tunnel, holding his lantern. Its yellow light danced across his face, across the face he had stolen, the face he wore like a mask. Behind him stood dozens of others, men, women, children, old people, teenagers, every age, every shape, all silent, all smiling, all with the same glowing yellow eyes. The sight made my stomach turn, because some of them were clearly dead. I recognized faces from the photographs in the library, people who had vanished decades ago, people who should have been buried, people who should have been dust. Yet here they stood, watching us, waiting, like obedient members of some impossible hive. The prisoner whispered, "Don't look into their eyes." Nobody asked why. Ward took another step forward. His smile widened. "Daniel." The voice sounded gentle, almost friendly, like an old acquaintance. "You're making this much harder than it needs to be." I didn't answer. The thing wearing Ward's face sighed. "You came looking for the truth. Another step. Now you've found it." Its gaze drifted toward the prisoner. Something dark flashed across its features. Hatred. Pure hatred. "Still alive, Elias?" The prisoner bared his teeth. A low growl escaped his throat. "Not entirely human." The creature smiled. "Stubborn as ever." The prisoner slammed both hands against the bars. The iron cage shook violently. "You should have killed me." The hollow man laughed. The sound echoed through the cavern, and every stolen face behind it laughed too. Hundreds of voices, perfectly synchronized. The sound made my skin crawl. "No," the creature shook its head. "I needed you to watch." A distant explosion echoed from above. Everyone froze, even the hollow man. The sound came from town. Then another followed, and another. Gunfire, screams, chaos. Blackthorn Hollow was fighting back. The creature tilted its head, listening, then smiled. They never learn. The words carried no anger, only amusement, like a farmer discussing livestock. The prisoner gripped the bars harder. Leave them alone. The hollow man looked genuinely puzzled. Why? The answer hit harder than any threat could have. Why? To it, human lives meant nothing. Not enemies, not prey, resources, the way people see trees, or cattle, or crops, things to be harvested, nothing more. The creature suddenly looked at me, directly at me. The attention felt physical, like invisible claws pressing against my skin, and somehow became even more disturbing. "You know what makes humans predictable?" I said nothing. It continued anyway. "Hope. Another step. Closer. Hope makes you brave." A pause. "Hope makes you stupid." The figures behind it remained perfectly still, like statues, like puppets waiting for strings to move. The hollow man raised a hand. One of the yellow-eyed figures stepped forward immediately. A teenage girl, no older than 16. Her expression remained empty. Her movements unnatural, mechanical. The creature rested a hand on her shoulder. "You see this one?" I couldn't look away. "She died 3 nights ago." The girl smiled, slowly, blankly. The hollow man's grin widened, but she's still useful. Jacob raised his rifle and fired. The shot struck the girl directly in the chest. She collapsed. The hollow man didn't even flinch. The girl remained motionless for several seconds, then stood up again. The hole in her chest slowly closed, bone knitting, flesh reconnecting, skin reforming. My heart nearly stopped. No, that wasn't possible. The prisoner looked sick, not surprised, sick, as if he hated witnessing it every single time. The hollow man spread its arms.
Do you understand now?
Nobody answered, because nobody wanted to. The creature nodded. Good. Then the cavern shook, hard. A deep rumble echoed through the darkness behind us. The massive shape hidden in the depths shifted again. Stone cracked. Ancient pillars groaned. Dust poured from the ceiling. Every yellow-eyed figure turned simultaneously toward the darkness, toward the sleeping giant. For the first time, the hollow man's smile faded. Only slightly, but enough. The prisoner noticed and laughed. A real laugh, a dangerous laugh. The hollow man looked at him. The prisoner grinned. "You're afraid." Silence. The creature didn't answer. The prisoner's smile widened. After all this time, another rumble shook the cavern. Louder, closer. "You're still afraid of what's down there." The hollow man's eyes narrowed, a predator being reminded that it wasn't the biggest predator. The realization chilled me. Whatever slept beneath the mountain frightened the thing that had terrorized Blackthorn Hollow for centuries.
The answer arrived moments later. A sound emerged from the darkness. Not a howl, not a growl, a heartbeat, slow, massive, ancient, thump. The cavern trembled, trembled. Stone dust fell from above. Thump. Stone dust fell from above. Thump. The air itself seemed to vibrate. Every yellow-eyed figure took a step backward, including the hollow man. The prisoner closed his eyes and whispered, "No." Father Grayson looked terrified. "What is it?" The prisoner opened his eyes. The answer came quietly, almost reverently. The thing that created us. Silence followed. Absolute silence. Even the Hollow Man seemed unwilling to speak. Then another heartbeat echoed through the darkness. Closer now. Thump. A crack appeared in the cavern floor. Thump. Another crack. Thump. The stone split wider. Something beneath was moving. Something enormous. The prisoner stared into the darkness, and for the first time, I saw tears in his eyes. Not fear, not pain. Grief. Centuries of grief. The kind of grief that only comes from knowing exactly what's about to happen. The Hollow Man finally spoke. One word. Run. Nobody expected that. Not from it. Not from the monster. Yet the fear in its voice was unmistakable. The prisoner looked shocked. The creature repeated itself. Louder. Run. Then everything exploded. The cavern floor erupted. Stone shattered. Massive slabs of rock launched into the air. A deafening roar filled the underground chamber. Not a roar of rage. Not a roar of hunger. A roar of awakening. Something had been sleeping beneath Blackthorn Hollow for centuries, and now it was awake. The darkness split apart. A colossal shape emerged. Fur, bone, claws, eyes, hundreds of eyes. The sight defied comprehension. The thing looked less like an animal than a nightmare given flesh. A living mountain of teeth and limbs. Dozens of partially formed faces writhed across its body. Human faces, screaming faces, faces trapped beneath skin and fur. The first hunger. The original source. The ancient infection. The thing every other monster came from. And it was rising. Panic erupted instantly. The yellow-eyed figures scattered. Some fled into the tunnels. Others climbed the cavern walls. The Hollow Man backed away. Actual fear visible in its expression. The prisoner screamed, "Now!" Jacob didn't hesitate. He grabbed my arm. Father Grayson followed, and together we ran. Behind us, the first hunger continued to rise. Its roar shook the mountain. Its heartbeat shook the earth. Its awakening shook the entire valley. Far above us, Blackthorn Hollow's church bell began ringing wildly. Again, 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 as if warning the town, as if warning the world. Too late, far too late, because something ancient had awakened beneath the mountains, and for the first time in centuries, even the monsters were afraid. We escaped the cavern. Barely. Behind us, the first hunger continued to rise from the depths beneath Blackthorn Hollow. The mountain shook with every movement it made. Trees collapsed, stone cracked, the earth itself seemed alive. Jacob dragged me through the forest while Father Grayson stumbled behind us. Above the trees, the red moon burned like an open wound in the sky. The entire valley glowed crimson, and everywhere, the howling continued. Hundreds of voices, hundreds of monsters, hundreds of stolen souls. The Hollow Man's family. The town was dying. Houses burned. People ran through the streets. Some carried weapons. Others carried children. Most carried fear. The church bell rang endlessly. A warning, a funeral, a final goodbye. As we reached the edge of town, something stepped into the road. Dr. Ward, or what used to be Dr. Ward. The creature looked damaged now. Its human disguise flickered strangely. Skin stretched, bones shifted beneath flesh. Its face changed every few seconds. Dr. Ward, Jacob's brother, a little girl, an old woman, a teenage boy, dozens of stolen faces, trying desperately to remain human. Failing, the Hollow Man smiled, but the smile looked nervous now. Behind us, another roar shook the valley. The first hunger was getting closer. "You should have left," the Hollow Man said. Jacob raised his rifle. The creature laughed. No bullets left. Jacob checked the weapon. The monster was right. Empty. The Hollow Man looked at me. Not Jacob. Me. Only me. And suddenly I understood. The letter. The invitation. The reason I had been brought here. The creature hadn't wanted a journalist. It wanted a witness. Someone to remember. Someone to tell the story. Because stories survive, even when monsters die.
"You know what I am?" it asked. I said nothing. The creature leapt toward the red moon, then whispered, "I am not the first." Its voice trembled. For the first time it sounded afraid. "I am not even the worst." Another roar echoed through the mountains. Closer. Much closer. The Hollow Man turned toward the sound, and I finally saw terror in its eyes. Real terror. The first hunger was coming. For everyone, even its own children. Then the truth emerged. The prisoner had lied. Or perhaps he hadn't known. The Hollow Man wasn't serving the first hunger. It was hiding from it. Every victim, every stolen soul, every transformation, all of it had one purpose: to create enough bodies, enough voices, enough lives, to keep the first hunger asleep, to feed it, to distract it, for generations. The Hollow Man had been sacrificing the town to prevent something far worse from waking, and now it had failed. The forest exploded. A wall of fur, claws, and screaming faces emerged from the darkness. The first hunger, larger than any building in town. Its body twisted with hundreds of trapped human forms. Thousands of yellow eyes opened simultaneously. The sight was beyond horror, beyond sanity. People collapsed simply from looking at it. The thing was wrong, a living nightmare, a mistake in reality itself, and it was hungry. The Hollow Man stepped forward, alone, toward the ancient monster. The red moon illuminated both creatures. Father Grayson whispered, "My God." The Hollow Man smiled sadly. "No." Its voice barely carried across the wind. "Not God." Then it looked at me one final time and spoke the words that would haunt me forever. "Run." The battle lasted seconds. The first hunger struck. The Hollow Man disappeared beneath claws larger than cars. The earth shook. Buildings collapsed. The church shattered. The valley filled with screams. "Go." I ran. Father Grayson ran. Behind us, Blackthorn Hollow died. I never saw Jacob again. I never saw Father Grayson again. The screams continued for hours. Then silence. Absolute silence. By sunrise, the town was gone. Not destroyed, gone. As though it had never existed. The roads were gone, the houses were gone, even the church had vanished. Only forest remained. Endless forest. Silent forest. Waiting forest. 3 days later, I reached civilization. Authorities searched for Blackthorn Hollow. They found nothing. No town, no records, no cemetery. Nothing. The place had disappeared, like a bad dream. Eventually, I stopped talking about it, stopped writing about it, stopped thinking about it. Or at least I tried. That was 3 years ago. Last week, I received a letter. No return address. Yellow paper. Shaking handwriting. Inside was a single sentence. The exact same sentence that brought me to Blackthorn Hollow. The sentence that started everything. I still remember opening the envelope. I still remember reading the words and feeling my blood turn cold, because I knew immediately what they meant. The message said, "The killings have started again. Please come before the moon turns red." This time, the letter was signed. There was only one name, a name that should not exist. A name belonging to a man who died beneath Blackthorn Hollow. A name written in trembling ink. And beneath his signature, someone had added another line, a second handwriting, thin, jagged, almost claw-like. It read, "We're hungry."